Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the podcast, Life Through My Lens. I apologize that it's been so long since I posted my last video, but I've had quite a bit going on and just ready to jump back in it. So today I'm gonna be addressing a personal situation that I've had to endure myself throughout a large portion of my adult life, and I've actually kind of been going back and forth with, you know, not necessarily whether or not if I'm going to actually do this video and address this subject, but more so about how I'm going to address it. And it's largely because, a situation like this it can get pretty tedious, but I definitely do want to address this subject because of not only, being able to share my personal testimony of dealing with this, but also because of the fact that I've had so many people in my life that, I've either, known for a long time or come across and met and knew for a short period of time that has actually dealt with the exact same thing. And I actually have a buddy of mine who is currently going through this situation, and it's tough to be on the sideline knowing, about, the difficulty of it and how difficult it is to navigate it, and knowing what they're going through and talking to them, and just knowing how painful it can really be. And my goal with sharing this story and this testimony is basically to, shed some light on the subject a little bit to my best ability, and bring a little bit more of awareness to it, as well as, hopefully being a light in the darkness, that I wish that I had back then. I didn't even know what it was. And what I'm talking about is narcissism. And it's a it's a tough subject because there's a lot of gray area, and it's really confusing sometimes. Um it'll have you thinking all over the place and very confused when you try to really dive into the subject of it, and figure out exactly what it is, and if the person that you're with is, or the person that's in your life is actually, giving you this, has these type of traits and giving you these types of problems and stuff like that. But um basically, um sorry, my laptop keeps cutting off on me. But basically, with me, I didn't know. I had no idea what it was. I didn't even know it was a thing. I mean, I knew there was like mental illnesses, and certain traits that went along with certain mental illnesses and stuff like that. And I thought that I had a pretty good grasp on things, but it was actually a very random moment in my life and unexpectedly when I actually had it brought to my attention about the actual existence of narcissism and what a narcissist was. And I did not plan on figuring that out or finding that out, but the way that it came about was actually pretty ironic. And I'll explain what I'm talking about a little bit later. But it was tough to kind of really figure out how to explain this. Because in a nutshell, basically, I I'm not freshly out of a marriage, but I was married for a little over 10 years, and I dealt with what I didn't really understand at the time. I dealt with a lot of um, emotional abuse, I guess. And it's crazy because, like, a lot of men don't like to talk about stuff like that, especially, I mean, you know, it's because it's usually, to be quite honest, when you talk about things like this, it's usually the shoe on the other foot, to be honest. I mean, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the truth of the matter. And you know, I'm here to say that, these situations actually do occur. They do exist. And there are good men out there, such as myself. And by no means was I perfect in my marriage, but I absolutely gave my all and did my best. And looking back, with hindsight being 2020, I didn't realize exactly how much of an emotional roller coaster and the amount of like emotional turmoil that I had to like battle and endure because of narcissism. And the the amount of research that I have literally done on this subject when I was actually going through my divorce and I was actually in therapy, and my therapist at the time actually brought that to my attention when I was already a bit curious about it, and they had actually kind of brought a lot more light to it, and really opened my eyes up to what I was actually dealing with and why it was as difficult as it was. And I still deal with forms of it to this day. Um, so, without further ado, the way that I'm going to really handle this is I asked around, and since I'm not kind of like doing like an interview with anyone, and I'm doing this myself, I I rounded up, like a list of questions to basically ask myself to share those answers with you that would paint a better picture of exactly what I'm talking about and what I dealt with, and hopefully shed some light on this subject a little better for the people who are possibly dealing with it with, themselves. Um, and by all means, feel free to hit me up through messages, DMs, comments, whatever, and I'll try to elaborate better. And I really hope that, this video finds the right people. But we will start with the first question, and that first question is, can you share the initial experiences or signs that made you realize that your spouse, which was my then wife, when your then spouse had narcissistic tendencies? So again, like I said, I had no clue about narcissism or narcissistic tendencies. I had no idea what that was or what that meant. And basically what I found out was, looking back on some of these issues when I covered it in therapy specifically, was the amount of times I would be gaslighted per se. Like, it would I would be built up to an extent just to be knocked right back down. And when I mean knocked down, it would be like beat down into the ground, to where you would be built up on a regular basis and make you feel like that you were truly appreciated for a short stint, and then you were ultimately plummeted into the ground, and nothing you did or said or brought to the table was good enough for this person. And in my situation, under my circumstances, I dealt with this many times with my ex-wife. And the thing is what brought it to the light for me, and what just so happens to be one of the number one traits, I wouldn't say number one, but one of the top traits of a narcissist, is that person trying to pin their flaws or their shortcomings or their mistakes and mishaps on you, or blaming you for their mistakes. And I got that so much. Now, again, mind you, I was not perfect. And especially dealing with stuff like this made it even more difficult to be perfect. You know what I mean? But I really tried. Like I said, I gave it my all. And especially when I had children within the marriage, and, I became a father, I went even harder in trying to be the best husband and best father that I could possibly be. But it was so difficult when I would come across these scenarios with my ex-wife, to where it would be, you know it would be like I would be stuck in this rut because I was having to navigate around, all of these narcissistic traits, and her emotional instability and the ups and downs of, because she was actually diagnosed with bipolar when she was a teenager. And that did not help, because then there would be episodes of, the the most up you can possibly be to the lowest of the lows, and it would just come and go out of nowhere. And then it started turning into a cycle of like manic episodes, to where it was almost like clockwork, where we would be absolutely perfect for like the fall, winter, and then when spring rolled around, things would start to come undone, start to unravel, and then by the summertime, we're broken up, and she's off with somebody else. We're split up, and she's running back to an ex or talking to somebody else, and I'm catching conversations that she's hiding, and just it was nuts. But I loved her. I loved our family, and because of what I had mentioned before, the gaslighting, I always took her back all the time, where my family and my friends would be looking at me like, you're crazy. You're crazy. Why are you doing this? Like, because it's so much easier to see it on the outside looking in. And, but when you are actually the subject or the victim per se, you it's so hard to see what's actually going on. And it was really difficult for me. But the moment that I had the eye opener was I was randomly on the back porch with her one morning having my coffee, and I was sitting in a rocking chair that she had actually bought me for my birthday. And we were out there with our son, and he was playing, and she was clearly going through one of these episodes, and she was on the phone with somebody. And I later found out that I'm pretty sure she was talking to another guy. But either way, she asks me a question on the porch while I'm sitting there having coffee, and she says, she holds her phone like in front of my face, and she's like, can you do me a favor? Can you read this for me? So I read it. And it's basically, traits of something or someone, right? And they're not positive in any way. And I'm like, okay, yeah, so what is this? And she's like, who does that sound like? And I kid you not, when I read it, I'm like, ooh. So like, I told her, I was honest, and I said, look, promise you're not going to get mad at me if I answer this honestly? And she's like, yeah, for sure. Like, just tell me. And I said, in all honesty, that sounds exactly like you. And her face, she went from smiling to like angry in a split second. And she's like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, I'm like, not right now. I'm not talking about right now. I'm talking about, through all those difficult moments prior to now, like that we went through over and over in our marriage early on. Like, yeah, this is how you would be. You would be just like this. And I'm like, why did you ask me this in the first place? And she's like, that's you, because that's you. And I'm like, what? Like, how in the world? Like, so I'm like doing a double take, and I start looking it up. I'm like, what is that even called? And she said that's called narcissism, or narcissism. It's a narcissist. And I'm like, I've never even heard of that. So I'm like Googling, right? I start looking this stuff up myself, and I really start comparing myself And thinking back of, my lowest of low moments, and really trying to, like, bounce these traits off of myself and see if they stick, and really think, like, could this really be me? Does she really have something here? Because I knew that those specific traits that were listed that she showed me, they described her when she was going through these cyclic episodes. And I'm like, man, like, I can't find anything at all that sounds like me or resembles me. Like, I know that I have, like, issues, and I deal with depression and stuff like that. And, sometimes, I would have less patience than other times and stuff like that. But I never, like, could find anything specifically. So I start asking. I'm asking friends. I'm asking family. I'm like, hey, like, do you know what narcissism is? Do you know what a narcissist is? And, some knew, some didn't. And I'm like, showing them the traits or talking to the people that did know what it was. And I'm like, does this sound like me at all? Not one person said that. But a handful of these people that actually knew her said, that sounds like your wife. Well, long story short, lo and behold, I mean, this was shortly before I'd found out that she had actually been cheating. And she was in the middle of one of these manic episodes, clearly. And that was kind of at the forefront of it. And it led to a massive breakup that actually ended up being the final breakup of our marriage, that which led to our divorce. But that would be the initial experiences and signs that made me realize that my ex-wife was actually a narcissist. And it wasn't until I was actually accused by her of narcissism and being a narcissist myself. And it took a lot of extensive research on my end, and way further on down the road, it took therapy and a therapist actually telling me, no, that's not you. That is not you. You are being accused of being what they are. And that was huge for me. And that is something that I hope so badly that, like, this, like, this video can reach the right people, because there's so many people out there dealing with this that have no idea that they're right in the middle of it. And, the finger is being pointed at them, and everything just feels so hopeless, and they feel like they're doing everything, but nothing they do is right. And this is why. I'm not saying that's a guarantee, but it is very, very, very likely that if you are dealing with something like that, it is because whoever you are with, or whoever is in your life at that moment, and it don't have to be a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend. It could literally be a parent, a sibling, anybody. There are so many people that could be in your life. A friend, a so-called friend, could be in your life, and that is a narcissist and has narcissistic traits or even tendencies, that is projecting this stuff off onto you, and it will make your life miserable. So that is the big reason why I'm like, I have to talk about this. I gotta address it. Like, I thank God every day that I've made it through this whole process, and I do everything that I possibly can to never be like that ever. Like, because that is a big fear of mine, that I would never want to be like that. And especially being a father, I couldn't even imagine. There's parents out there that actually do this type of stuff, or they're like this with their children, and it's really hard to fathom. And but that would be the initial traits, signs, tendencies. Moving on would be, how did you handle your spouse's bipolar diagnosis when they were diagnosed as a teenager? So this is something that I didn't know. It wasn't shared up front when we first met. Actually, I found out through my sister, actually, because my sister was actually her her best friend, which is how I was introduced to her. But after I had fallen for her, I thought everything was perfect. I thought there was nothing wrong in this. This is the woman for me. And it wasn't until after I'd fallen for her and started to fall in love with her that it started off initially as little red flags that eventually turned into very large red flags. But it wasn't until I think we were already married when we had this deep conversation one night, and she had told me that she had been diagnosed. Like, this was the first time she had ever talked to me personally about it, outside of me being told by my sister. But she said she was diagnosed as a teenager, actually bipolar schizophrenic, and that she tried medication and that it had a very bad reaction with her, so she stopped and had just basically been living with this stuff without medication at all, which would explain a lot. But moving on beyond that, we got, could you describe the impact of your spouse's manic episodes of your relationship? Absolutely. So these were the most difficult times of our marriage and would serve as backbreakers for pretty much any other common marriage, and probably end any other common marriage. But when you're dealing with someone who is narcissistic, that gaslights you, that makes you feel like you are the problem, when they are messing up, when they're doing bad, when they are doing wrong, then the script is flipped on you, and it makes you feel like you have to do more, that you got to clean your act up, that if you weren't such and such, then they wouldn't be doing this and stuff. But the truth of the matter is it's the other way around. If they weren't making the mistakes, if they weren't doing this, then everything would be fine, because what you are actually doing is enough. But it makes your minor problems, your minor issues, multiply by a magnitude. Like, it makes everything seem like it's 100 times worse than what it really is on your end when you're being gaslighted like that, and the finger is being pointed at you by the actual person who is making the mistakes in your relationship. But when these manic episodes would actually take place, it's like I said, it would be a cycle, and it would almost be seasonal for us in our marriage. I think the longest stint that we ever seen in our 10-year marriage was maybe 2 years where we didn't split up. Maybe. But it's like I said, we would be great through the fall and the winter. But by the time spring started rolling around and the weather started warming up, it was like something would snap and things would just start unraveling in our relationship. It would turn into, things that would initially be looked over through the fall and the winter seasons that you would do that wouldn't be that big of a deal to anybody. I mean, and I'm talking about like things like, I didn't get to the dishes last night because I got in late from working a double shift, so I did them this morning. That type of stuff. Like, the spring and summer would roll around, I would wake up to being yelled at about stuff like that. Now, mind you, in my marriage, I specifically did the laundry. Now, we were a married couple with 4 children before we got divorced. 2 of the children were mine and hers. 2 of the children were hers and in a previous relationship. And I literally would get to the point, like, in order for our house to be maintained properly, I would work. I was working 6 days a week, over 10 hours a day. On my one off day, I would get my daughter that I had in a prior relationship, get my daughter, and she would visit me on the one day, and that's a whole different ballgame, whole different story, which ties into this, but I'm not even going to address that. But all while trying to be the best father I could be to my daughter and the best father I could be to the other 4 children, and keep things together at work that was extremely stressful on an unfathomable level at the place that I was working at the time. I was having to come home, do laundry, do the dishes, and also help with the kids and constantly tidy up around the house. She didn't work. Now I had seen things like this, these traits, out of my own mother when she dealt with very, very severe depression. And I understood my ex-wife had severe depression and manic episodes. I got that. But it was so difficult to keep my head above water sometimes and stay positive. And sometimes those emotions and the stress would overflow, and it would lead to me, as politely as I possibly could in the moment, asking for help. And then I wouldn't get the expected or proper polite answer back, and it would lead to arguments. And next thing you know, I'm inconsiderate, I'm a douchebag, I'm this evil person, worst husband in the world, for me to ever expect my wife, because I guess of how she was feeling, to lift an arm and help around the house and make my life a little bit easier as a husband, as a father. So, those things would happen constantly in these cycles of these manic episodes that she would have. And that would be the source of the unraveling, those moments like that would ultimately lead to her, 9 times out of 10, cheating. And I would catch her cheating, usually with her ex, but sometimes with other random guys. And it would always be flipped up on me. I would either be accused of cheating or having an affair, or I would be such a bad husband that she was forced to run into the arms of another man or her ex or something of another. So that is a very, very severe form of gaslighting. That is extreme narcissistic tendencies. And it's like I said, unfortunately, when you look up narcissism, you look up the narcissistic tendencies, most of the time, majority of the time, it is finger pointed at men for being this way. But I am here to say right now that is not the case. And there are it is an alarming rate of women who are developing into this type of woman as they get older, because of how many women there actually are like this, and it's not being addressed. So these daughters are growing up watching their mothers do their husbands or boyfriends like this, and they're watching them, handle their relationships like this. So they're growing up and they're doing it themselves, and then they're, I'm telling you, it's like a snowball effect. And there are more and more and more women this day and age who are actually treating their husbands and boyfriends like this just as much, or if not more, than men are their wives and girlfriends. I'm telling you straight up, because I can't tell you how many guy friends that I have that have been just beat down emotionally by their girlfriends or their wives. And it's usually after they're either married to them, because they're gaslighted into the marriage, or they have a child with them. And then once they have a child, it's almost like they feel like they got them locked and they can treat them however they want to treat them. And I'm not saying that this is all women, because there are some amazing women out there, and I am sure that there are more amazing women than there are evil women like this. But the goal of me sharing this, there are absolutely women like this, and they are bad. They are evil people, and they will put you through absolute hell. And I am walking, living proof of a man who actually dealt with this type of treatment and actually made it through to the other side. Because I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of men that don't. They give up. And I thank God every day that I did not let it get to me that bad, because I am not playing when I tell you that when I felt the lowest of the lows in my marriage, there were times where I thought about it because it hurt that bad. But moving along, how did I manage the challenges of multiple breakups due to infidelity in my marriage? Well, it's like I said, I managed to deal with these things because I was led to believe that I was the reason behind it. And where I would say that I wasn't a saint is late in our marriage. I had been cheated on so many times that I actually decided to retaliate in the same manner. And when I found out that my then wife had cheated on me yet again for the umpteenth time, I decided to go do it myself. And I did. And unfortunately, it created an even more difficult situation for everyone involved, because at that point in time, when we both were cheating on each other during one of these manic episode cycles, she had got back with her ex. I was seeing another woman, and we both got pregnant at the same time. And not to excuse my behavior, because it was dumb on my part to let it get to me to that point where I would make a decision like that and take a risk like that. But I kid you not, I made an ignorant decision like that because of the simple fact that I wanted to have an excuse to feel better about what was going on in my marriage and being cheated on and stuff like that. And it's like I said, it has absolutely no excuse. It was absolutely dumb on my part, and I should have never done that. Now, mind you, I don't regret my daughter by any means. I love my daughter to death, but it has put such a strain on our personal relationship. And I, to this day, don't have a relationship with my daughter because of how my ex-wife was. And she actually let those narcissistic tendencies leak off into mine and my daughter's relationship, to the point to where it put such a strain on it that her mother made the conscious decision to move away with her. And ultimately, I lost all contact with my daughter because of it. And it's just, it can get bad. And it's like I said, I don't excuse my behavior, and it's never wise to go eye for an eye, no matter what it is. I mean, I understand that I was cheated on, and I was trying to, numb it by acting the same, but look what happened. But I will say this, that if I was never caught up in a relationship like that, and I was never being treated that way, I promise you this, I would have never made a decision like that, because that was not me. It was completely out of character, and I don't cheat. That's one thing that I didn't do. I prided myself on being a very, very loyal and dedicated boyfriend / husband later on in life. That was something that I just didn't do. But because of the way that I was treated over the years, and the up and down roller coaster manic episodes that we dealt with, and the multiple cases of infidelity, I wanted to take the pain away. So I thought that would probably be the best way to do it. And it was dumb, and it didn't work, and it caused more pain in more people's lives and it was never worth it. But that's what can happen when you have the lack of knowledge of what you're actually dealing with, and you're trying to navigate the circus that is narcissism. And it's a rough road. So again, that's the reason why I'm trying to shed light on this situation, because I hope to God I can help somebody. So moving on, what was your reaction and response when both you and your spouse had children out of wedlock during marriage? I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated, because when that happened in my marriage, I was not a father yet. My then wife, she did have a child, but it was not with me. And that is not how I wanted to have my first child at all. I was in love with my wife. I wanted children with my wife. I wanted the best for our family. And because of one weak moment and an uncharacteristic decision on my part, I I ended up fathering a child that was completely unexpected, and it was so difficult to navigate because I was married. And then on top of it, shortly after finding out, I had to tell my wife everything that had happened, and that I had a baby on the way, and I had full expectation of our marriage coming to an end. And that's what it seemed like was going to happen. Then I was notified of her actually being pregnant by her ex. And what made that situation so crazy is the fact two things actually came out during those pregnancies. And when I say this is a wild scenario, it is absolutely wild. But it was said that during a visit from my wife at the time, during a separation, when she came up to visit, we were together multiple times. We were still married, and it wasn't until after she went back, because she came back up to Tennessee from Florida to get the remaining of her belongings, and it wasn't until after she went back to Florida that I found out that she was pregnant. Now, mind you, at the time, there was a confusion surrounding the pregnancy between the girl that I was seeing while I was split up, because she told me that she was not only with me at the time, and clearly, in that situation, there's no way for you to know until an actual paternity test can be done, but she did openly admit that I wasn't the only one that she was with. She was actually with her ex as well, which made it all the more difficult, because now it's like, is your child mine or your ex's? And then here comes the scenario where my wife is pregnant, and we were together around that time frame. So me and my then wife actually went to the doctor together, and the doctor told us face to face that pregnancy was conceived right around the time frame that she was up in Tennessee with me. So now my then wife was going full-fledged on the fact that this child was mine. She wholeheartedly believed that this child was mine, and we understood that there was a possibility, but she wanted to reconcile. I was still in love with my wife, and now questioned whether or not, if the girl that I was seeing, if her child that she was pregnant with was actually mine, because it was basically a toss-up. So that was probably one of the most difficult time frames of my entire life, because there were two children on the way, one of which was with my wife that I was split up from because she cheated on me with her ex, and then one with a girl that I was seeing and we didn't know because she was with her ex. It was just an absolutely insane time frame, and unfortunately we could not find out until after both babies were born who those babies actually belonged to. And ultimately I elected to stay with my wife because I was still in love with my wife, and she was going very, very hard at being back with me, and claimed that she was completely sorry and vowed to never do it again and all this. And we wholeheartedly believed by the end of that pregnancy that her child was mine. And in heartbreaking fashion, it turned out after the girl who had actually, had a child on the way with what we didn't know whether it was me or her ex, she moved back closer to be with her mom. So I moved back to Florida. After I'd moved back to Florida, both babies were born. The girl that moved back with her mom, that baby was mine. My wife's, that baby was not. That was difficult. That was heartbreaking. And that was a whole new challenge that I had to navigate and somehow, some way, fight to be the best father that I possibly could be to my now new daughter, my first daughter, first child ever, in that fashion. So that was hard. But moving on, it said, how did you discover the infidelity that led to the divorce? So I had discovered multiple cases of infidelity, and ignorantly always forgave her and allowed her back into my life. And the more and more that I did it, the more and more deep we were into our marriage and relationship. There were more children involved. So it just got more and more difficult as time went by to walk away. Because, she had cheated on me before we even had kids together. And by the end, we had 2 now together. And that made it even all the more difficult. I never would have ever, to this day, I promise you, the mindset that I had, I would have endured all of that 100% just to stay with my sons and be in their lives 100%. Because that was the last thing that I wanted for them. I wanted them to have a 2-parent home, something that I never had in my entire life. I wanted them to have both parents, and I was determined to figure it out and get it to a good place once and for all. And unfortunately, I was never able to do that. And it wasn't because I had actually decided to walk away. It was because that she cheated and decided to eventually walk away at that point in time. And the way that I discovered it was I just had a feeling. I had a feeling. It was a very uneasy feeling, and I would always develop this feeling whenever there actually was something going on. It was like an intuition. But I could always tell when there was something off. And I came home early from work one night, and I noticed that there was a water bottle, actually, oddly enough, that was in my house, of a brand that I knew for a fact my wife despised that water. It might sound silly, but there was no chance that if she were to literally go inside of a store or some kind of gas station or whatever and choose a water herself, if there were 2 waters available, I promise you it would have been a different one, not that one. So I knew it wasn't hers. When I confronted her, of course, she, initially said that it was hers. I told her, come on now. Like, come on. And I think we had actually had an instance where we actually did go to the store, because I did drink that water ever so often, but she didn't. And the only question was, the way that it led up to it was, I said, was somebody at the house? That's how I approached it. I didn't even mention the water. I said, was somebody at the house today? And she said, no. And when she said that, I said, well, then whose water is on the counter? And she said, what are you talking about? What water? And I said, whose water is that on the counter? There's a water bottle that's like half drank on the counter. And I know that's not yours. You hate that water. She gets up to go and look. She didn't know. And then she said, that's yours. It ain't mine. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So, long story short, that's how I found out. And I mean, initially, it's like I said, the finger would be pointed at me. I was out of pocket because I was confronting her about what was clearly obvious. And I just wanted the truth. And because I was approaching the situation like that, I was the bad guy. And then ultimately ended up coming out. And when it did come out, I was given an ultimatum: either leave or she was calling the police. I chose to stay. So that would lead into the next thing. What were your circumstances surrounding the false abuse allegations that were made by your ex-spouse? When I decided to stay at the house and I told her that I was not leaving my children, no matter what decision that she had decided to make, I told her, look, I'm the only one that's working. I'm paying all of the bills. I'm paying for this house. We rented a house in Murfreesboro. I said, I'm paying for the house. I'm paying all the bills. I'm paying for the insurance, the cell phones, everything. I'm not walking away from my home because you made the choice to cheat again. Period. You want me out of your presence? Cool. You leave. You cheated. You leave. She said, I'm not leaving. You have to leave. Then she started threatening me because I told her I wasn't going and I was not leaving my children. And, based on a bad decision that she decided to make. And she's like, well, if you don't leave, I'm going to call the cops. And I'm like, go ahead, call the cops. Like, what are you going to say? Well, she said a lot, apparently, because in the long run, because I moved my bed and belongings into the living room until I was going to figure something out. But she goes into the bedroom, slams the door, locks it, whatever, starts making a whole lot of racket. I hear things like being thrown around. I hear a couple of things like breaking there. She's like having a fit, basically. And I told her, like, what are you doing? And I even texted her, and thank God that I actually did, because this text message actually helped out in court. But what it was is she ultimately ended up physically harming her own legs while she was in the room, like throwing this fit. And I had no idea that that's what she was doing. And I ultimately fell asleep on the couch, and I was completely prepared to go to work the next morning. I had to open. And little did I know I would be woken up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And when I was woken up that early, it was because she was actually up and getting my sons ready. And then at this point, it was like close to 5, and I was like, I get up and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, where are you taking them? And she's like, to the park. So the park at 5 o'clock in the morning? Why? She's like, because I want to. Do you have a problem with that? And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm not even gonna argue about this, but I'm like, whatever, have at it. And I was even polite and was like, have a good day. I kiss and hug my sons goodbye. She walks out the door. I'm sipping on my coffee as her van is pulling out of the driveway. Here come 2 sheriff's cars that pull into the driveway. Police officers come bang on the door. They open the door up. They have this paperwork. It's an order of protection. And they told me that I had like 15 minutes to gather whatever belongings and that I had to leave the house. This had never happened to me before, so I had no idea what I was dealing with. But I found out real quick and ultimately was never, ever allowed to come back to my home. And the court dates kept getting pushed and pushed. And, I called my dad. I was in tears because I had no idea what I was going to do. My dad took me in, and I was just so exhausted. Couldn't sleep, but tired on an unbelievable level. And just had been spending every waking moment racking my brain about how in the world I could see my sons again, be in their lives. I didn't want to lose them. And, so I'm like checking social media and looking on Instagram, see if I can find out any detail, like what in the world is going on. Because I can't communicate with her. I can't communicate with my sons. I couldn't go back to the home. If I did, I was going to be arrested based on an allegation, something that was claimed but never proven, right? So finally, I got a court date. Finally. And it took a lot. It took a long time, but she was finally proven in all her lies. And we were able to work out a schedule and everything. And it's like I said, that one text message, it showed, like if I was in a rage and I was like physically harming her around the time frame that she was talking about, why in the world would I be texting her right in the middle of it, talking about why are you making all that noise? And she was texting me back and everything. So these things were ultimately addressed, but it took thousands of dollars of mine that I didn't have. On top of her taking all of my belongings and selling them on like Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace and stuff. There were endless pictures of like her ex that was now like at my house that I was still forced to pay for. And she had multiple guys showing up to the house and all this, all while I was forced out of my home that I was still paying for. Still paying for her phone. I was forced to still pay for her phone, pay for the internet, pay for the cable. And all she had to do was just lie. So she did. And for the longest, I lost because of that. I missed my youngest son's first birthday. I missed my youngest son's first steps. I missed so much. And by the time that I had finally gathered up enough evidence, had enough court hearings, I finally got it together and I started being able to visit with them. Initially, it was supervised visitation, which would pin her there upon her request. Now, mind you, she requested an order of protection based on the fact that she said that she didn't trust me and that I was dangerous and violent, but then ultimately requested to be around me while I visited with my sons. Just nothing added up, nothing made sense. Judge seen through it, so it was ultimately thrown out. So left a real bad taste in my mouth. It still makes me angry to this day talking about that, especially when it comes to my sons and somebody coming in between me and my sons and my relationship with them. That is the most important thing to me on this planet. Like I said, I've lost the opportunity to have a relationship with my daughter, but I will do absolutely anything to prevent that from happening with my sons. And it kills me to think about everything that I had to deal with. It was so wrong, and how the court system handled that and allowed her to just get away with it and push court dates out and everything. There was no care whatsoever. The guy in those scenarios are never taken into consideration. Their emotions, and that's a whole different ball game. But anyways, it says, let's see. Can you discuss the reasons your spouse refused to divorce despite the breakups? Yeah, that's something right there. The simple fact that even after all of that, it literally was like she fought tooth and nail to not get divorced. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a walk in the park for me either. Even though I had went through all of that and there was all these like just roller coaster of emotions. I mean, there was, I kid you not, I didn't think that it was possible for you to love and hate somebody at the same time, but I 100% felt that. I loved her. I was still in love with her, and I hated her at the same time for what she put me through with my sons and all the lies that she had told. And then at the same time, it was like a battle with my mind and my heart because my heart was still attached to her, but my mind like knew, you know, everything that she was doing was just evil. And it was so hard to navigate, and that's what led me to try therapy out. Another opportunity for me to give that a chance, and I'm glad that I did. It ultimately didn't work out in the long run, but yeah, I needed an outside opinion, an outside voice at that time because I didn't have it at that time. But it was always just it. I mean, that's another telltale trait of a narcissist is when even though they do this, they act as if, they don't want you. You're the worst thing on the face of this earth and there ain't nothing good about you, and they put you through this turmoil, but then they don't want to let go of you. They don't. They still can't let go of you. And God forbid anybody else wants you, because then they run right back and try to get you back, which is something that she used to do all the time whenever I would try to actually move on when we would split up and things were looking like it was leading to a divorce. But yeah, I mean, that would literally be the only cause. That is a narcissistic trait. And it made it that much more difficult to navigate through the divorce because she would purposely make it difficult for us to actually follow through with it. And I think, we actually didn't until she felt like she had it all figured out and things were in her favor when she actually finally signed the papers. But another was, what were the circumstances surrounding the false abuse? Oh, well, I've already covered that. How did the order of protection affect your life and relationship with your children? It was absolutely horrible. It was misery. Because when you have allegations like that thrown against you, I'm sorry, but the way that the law works regarding an order of protection, it automatically deems you the bad guy. Whoever that is filed on, I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. If those allegations are against you and they proceed to get, which it's a very simple process, doesn't take much, but if they proceed to serve you the order of protection, you are guilty until proven innocent, not the other way around. And it's like I said, it put such a strain on mine and my son's relationship. There was absolutely, it wasn't just me stay away from her, because I would have gladly done that. It was her and the kids. And it was not because we have proof that you did this. It was because she said you did. And it took multiple court hearings because she would not show up, or she would show up and ask for a continuance because she didn't have an attorney. And it just pushed the time out. And the more and more that she pushed the time out, the more and more I didn't have time with my sons. And it was heartbreaking. It was absolutely nerve-wracking and probably one of the lowest of lows outside of 2009 that I had ever felt. So, moving beyond that, could you describe your experience moving in with your father and saving up to fight for custody of your sons? I cannot thank my dad for stepping up to the plate enough, because if it hadn't been for him, I don't know what I would have done. He not only took me in immediately, he came and picked me up when I had nowhere to go. He gave me a roof over my head and told me he refused to charge me a dime, that he wanted me to take everything that I earned and put it towards debt that I owed, which, mind you, there was a credit card that she had part ownership of. She was like, she had her name on the card, ran it completely up, maxed it out. Also had a credit card that I had to pay almost $8,000 on for her engagement ring and wedding bands. Just a lot of debt, and I did not have a substantial amount of income at that point in time, especially being forced to pay child support and all of this other stuff too. So that that was a godsend when my dad took me in, because he allowed me to, get back on my feet and take all of my income and not only put it towards debt, which got me ultimately debt free in a year and a half, but it allowed me to put in a lot of overtime and utilize all the extra money that I possibly had and hire an attorney multiple times, mind you. But I was able to hire an attorney on multiple occasions and take things to court, battle through these allegations, win ultimately, get a relationship with my son that was court ordered, and be able to move forward with some form of normalcy. And that's all thanks to my dad for stepping up to the plate and allowing me that moment in my life, that year and a half, to battle one of the lowest points of my life and get myself financially where I needed to be. So much thanks to my father, and kudos to that guy. That's the type of person I want to be for my sons, because when it came down to it, he was there for me in a way that nobody has ever been. So love you for that. Let's see. We got Have you managed to rebuild your how have you managed to rebuild your financial stability after these difficult experiences? I mean, that's basically the same thing. With my dad being able to move in with my dad for that year and a half and establish, some form of normalcy, and use all of my finances to tackle any and all debt that I had accumulated during my marriage. It allowed me to get on my feet and ultimately migrate from a dead-end career to a now very promising one that was one of the best decisions that I had ever made financially as well. So all thanks to my dad for making that all possible. So that was a great light in the darkness to have in that time frame, was my dad. So can you share the steps that you took to establish a good relationship with your sons despite the challenges? It was difficult. It was very difficult, because when I finally got the chance to establish a relationship back with my sons, it was almost as if my youngest son didn't even remember who I was, because he was so young, and it took a little bit for him to warm back up to me. Now my oldest son, I mean, we right back in. It was, we fit right back like a glove, but the difficulty is they love us both the same. And it's difficult when, you really don't like that person that they love as well. And you have to set aside all of your negative feelings and leave them all at the door. And you have to be the best parental figure as possible. And you cannot show any of that, especially at a young age. And that's difficult. It's very hard to do. Very hard to do. But that was probably the hardest thing, was because, they would talk about their mom, especially like early on, or they would question, like, how come you're not home? Why don't you get back with mommy? This, that, and another. And it was tough to answer these questions properly. But there was trial and error, and some things that I regret, discussing. And I still make mistakes like this to this day, because me and their mother still have disagreements to this day for these same reasons. And it's tough. It's tough being a parent in situations like this when you battle your own mental illnesses such as depression and, the emotional roller coasters of recovery, dealing with, the whole gaslighting and narcissistic behavior and getting out of relationship like that. But also you're dealing with co-parenting with someone who is like that, and it's hard. It's hard to do. But yeah, that's that would be the difficulty of it, and that's the challenges that I faced. But thank God I was able to navigate that pretty good. And although I did have some hiccups here and there that I wish I could take back, you know, I think that I've done a great job in co-parenting them the best way that I possibly can, and maximizing the time that I had with them, making the best out of the time that I had with them. And I can honestly 100% say I have an amazing relationship with my sons to this day, and I can't wait to see them this Wednesday, by the way. But moving on. What specific events during the marriage had the most profound impact on your mental health? I would honestly say the cycle breakups. The cycle breakups and the multiple times, that I dealt with her infidelity, and then dealing with my own guilt of my own one time that I had, cheated in retaliation, and then also, the both of us having children out of wedlock while still being married. That was just absolutely insane and so hard to navigate, and that took a major toll on my mental health. Now, mind you, I don't know if you guys had watched any previous videos or even know who I am for this matter, and it's but what I dealt with back in 2009, this was all still fresh. I mean, I got married like less than a year after my girlfriend of 4 years had passed away in 2009 because of those tragic events that occurred. So I was still navigating through that and trying to process that and battling all of those emotions and depression, and just it was absolutely insane what I was having to deal with mentally. And it the way that it ultimately affected me to this day, now that I've seemingly made it through that, and I think I'm on the good side of things at this point. What I deal with today, the way that I'm impacted today, is I have a high level of anxiety that I have to battle with. Panic attacks occur randomly in my life now that I had never dealt with before. And depression. Depression seems to be a little bit more severe than it used to be whenever I battle it, but I'm a lot more knowledgeable regarding these things now, because I don't just try to ignore them. I address them, and I do extensive research, and I take necessary steps to make them better and improve. And because of that, I'm able to get a grasp on it and make it through. So but yeah, there's definitely some impacts from those moments in my marriage. Let's see. How do you cope with anxiety and PTSD resulting from your marriage and divorce experiences? That's tough. Because I actually, like I said, the panic attacks that led to like heart palpitations. It was affecting my health. The way that I've tried to address it is to try eating better was one, getting good rest as much as possible. That's still a challenge. I got 4 hours of sleep last night. Exercising regularly. I have a pretty active job, so I get good, I would say a decent amount of cardio just working, but I try to add more extra cardio on top of that. And I do have a gym membership now. I have been out for a while because I got sick and had a lot going on and I've kind of fallen off, but I do plan to get back on in there. And when I do have a good regimen going, I do have a good routine, and I am in the gym, I'm eating healthy, and I'm exercising regularly, it does have a positive effect on these things, and it seems to really suppress a lot of that anxiety and depression, and keep them at bay. So that's a good way that I handle it. Have you sought professional help or therapy to address the mental health challenges? Absolutely. Not too long after the divorce or in the process of the divorce, I went back to therapy. I had a bad taste in my mouth from prior therapy that I had given a shot during 2009 that didn't go so well. But luckily I did break down and give it a chance again, and it did drastically help me. Now, it was very expensive, and too infrequent. It wasn't enough for what I was paying, so I ultimately had to quit. But the sessions that I did have, especially initially, just having somebody to talk to who was, not close to the situation, didn't have any type of like relation to anyone, just having an unbiased listening ear was a good positive for me. How do you balance your own mental health struggles with being the best father that you can be? I just do. And I'm just being honest. I love my sons more than anything. And it is of the utmost importance to be the best father that I can possibly be in their life, be the best role model that I can possibly be in their life. And I don't have them all the time. I have them every other weekend from Friday to the following Tuesday. And in that short time frame, I make it a personal goal to set everything that I'm dealing with mentally and emotionally aside and focus on being the best influence, role model, and father that I possibly can be during that short time frame. And when they go, then I can address that, but that's just how I've been doing it. And because, there is no right and wrong way to handle it. I mean, obviously you don't want to, spill all of these emotions into their little lives or anything like that. But, I imagine it's probably a lot tougher for some than it is for others, but that's just how I navigate it and how I handle it. It's a personal challenge of mine that I have to deal with, and I understand there's a lot of these things that I'm just always going to have to live with until I hopefully can, overcome these things. But in the meantime, I'm not going to allow my shortcomings or my mental health battles or challenges have a negative effect on their lives. And, it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to allow it to have a strain on our relationship. So that's how I handle that. In what ways has this experience shaped your approach to parenting? Just like that, what I basically explained. I wouldn't wish how I've, felt throughout these, these ordeals in my life and these situations on anyone. It's like I said, man, it would be a backbreaker for, I would imagine, a lot of people to deal with it. And I thank God that I hadn't let it, just completely win. And my biggest goal as a father is to be that shining light and utilize my negative experiences as an opportunity to provide the best feedback and information and knowledge to my sons as they grow so that they can possibly avoid it and never have to deal with what I've dealt with in my life. So that would be my approach. But what advice would you offer to others who might be in a similar difficult relationship? Do your research. Open your eyes, pay attention to the conversations, the arguments, the disagreements. Really focus on how you're being talked to, how you're being treated, and take all of this information, this knowledge, and research it. Spill it all out there in Google. Look it up. That's what I did. Watch YouTube videos and see if this is what you are possibly dealing with. Because I promise you, if you are dealing with someone that is like this and they have been doing this to you especially for a long time, unfortunately, it's likely not going to get any better, and it's probably going to get worse. And you need to find the most peaceful possible way to get away. And that's the best advice that I could give to you. Seek therapy, confide into others that you trust, talk about it. Don't bottle it up. Don't just assume everything that they are saying that's negative about you is true, because that's what I did. And I did it for years until I finally snapped out of it, woke up, and started realizing, you're lying. This is not me. This is not who I am. And I am doing the best that I can. You just don't appreciate it. And that's what it was. That's it. It's tough. And I'm not saying that it's going to be a walk in the park. But you got to start somewhere, because if you suspect that this is the type of person that you're dealing with, I promise you, man, it is not easy, and it could be very dangerous. It could be a very dangerous situation in the long run. So just be very careful. Let's see. Are there any positive aspects or lessons you've learned from this challenging journey? Yeah, I pay much closer attention to red flags, I'll tell you that much. And I don't allow certain behavior in relationships to go unnoticed. And I will not hesitate to cut it off if I suspect something like that possibly being the case. Yeah, because the last thing that I want to do is ever tie myself back up into a situation like that. And what's unfortunate is people like that, who have those traits and tendencies, they tend to seek out people who are easily susceptible to that type of behavior. People who are insecure about themselves, or someone who is freshly coming out of a breakup, that are probably down on themselves, or would have any reason to be down on themselves, or deal with depression. Those type of people work their way into their lives, and they feed on that. They use that as an opportunity to, like, that's how they gaslight you. They build you up, make you feel like that they are the light in your darkness. And then once they got you where they want you, then they tear you right back down. And it's such a manipulative process. And by the time that you realize it, it's too late. So keep your head on a swivel and make sure that you don't let these things just go by the wayside. Whenever you feel like it's wrong, if you feel like it's a red flag, pay attention to it, research it, and take it very serious. What strategies do you use to maintain a positive co-parenting relationship with your ex-spouse? I stand firm in what I genuinely believe is right, and I stand firmly against what I genuinely believe in my heart is wrong. I am guided by what I believe is best for my sons. Now, mind you, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And and it would be insane for me to try to be. And I have slipped up, had hiccups, you know, not always had the most positive things to say about my ex around my sons. Sometimes it's been tough. But the ultimate goal is to do what's absolutely best for the kids. And if I genuinely believe that a decision that she is making, or that she is, in disagreement with me about, I listen. I will 100% listen. And there's been times where I've openly admitted, all right, you got a point. You're right. I'm wrong. And we'll go with whatever she's talking about or something. But if I absolutely wholeheartedly believe, you know, this is what's right, this is what's best for my boys, I will stand firm on that, and I don't budge. I do not budge. Now, there are times where you have to meet in the middle on certain things, but I mean, with her having the cycles, like I've explained, they still occur. They still occur in her life, and there's been moments where she has not made the best decisions, and it has been really tough because she has primary custody, and I only have so much say. But I've had to make moves that were difficult for the betterment of my sons, to make sure that they are in the best and proper care. And thank God I haven't had to do any make any difficult decisions like that recently or anything. But I know deep down, and that's something that I have already decided long ago, that if I ever have to make a difficult decision for the betterment of my sons, then I absolutely will. And that's just the way that it works. So, I've had to call the police. I've had to call Department of Children's Services. I've had to make difficult decisions like this, because what's most important is, are my sons safe and in the best environment possible? And that's all that matters. So, as long as she's making the proper decisions as their mother, and she's putting their well-being, first, and treating it as if it's of the utmost importance, then there's no issue here. But if I feel like that she's making decisions that are putting them in harm's way, or she could be making better decisions or something like that, then absolutely, yeah, I'll do what I can to step in and try to encourage that to be in the get back on the right path or whatever. But because I've said this multiple times, I would never want to take a child away from their mother, or especially I've felt those battles as a child myself, and the whole tug of war situation and stuff like that it's just not good. And I want for them to have the best relationship with me and their mother, and that's what I want for them, because that's what's best for them. They need their mother and their father. But it's like I said, if I feel like that their mother is not doing what's best for them, then that's when I have to step in and make a difficult decision, and do what's right for my sons and what's best for them. Let's see. How have you communicated with your children about the past and their mother's actions? They ask many questions. And the older that they get, the more curious they become. I have, both of my sons ask me multiple times, when are y'all getting back together? Why, I guess it's been even led to believe that, the reason why we're not together is because it's my decision, which is completely incorrect. Like that, I mean, she's the one that did all of it, so that's not the case. So I got to navigate around those things. Um, but they were led to believe early on that the reason why we split up is she told them the lie that she told the court. She said that I physically abused her. I couldn't believe that she actually told young children that same lie. And what is worse about that is the fact that even though that was proven incorrect in court and thankfully settled on and moved beyond, they're told that, and it's not proven in no court for them. They're told that by their mom. So what they're told by their mom, they trust, and that's what they're believing. And it took years for me to actually move past that. They're starting to figure out on their own, like, hold up, they've been around me long enough to know, nah, that ain't daddy. Daddy don't do that stuff. No, like, he ain't a mean bone in his body. So, luckily I've had the time with them for them to, figure out on their own. But they still ask questions constantly. And my oldest son wants us back together now, to this day. And that's always tough to answer. Like, why he can't have that, But it's been a challenge. It's absolutely been a challenge. And I imagine it's going to continue to be a challenge for the duration of their entire childhood on into, teenage years and into adulthood, until they come to terms with what things are and figure out who we actually are as individuals based on their own experience, But I have to be very mindful in the words that I use and how I phrase things, but I also refuse to lie to my sons. So that's been difficult because when they ask me certain questions that they're starting to get old enough to realize doesn't make sense, they want to know the truth about, in the best way that I can, I tell them the truth. And sometimes that ain't always the nicest truth to find out about their mother, but I've tried to not answer those questions, and they will either become asked more and more, or they'll ask their mother, and then their mother will lie, and it'll be flipped. So that's always difficult. But can you share any support systems or resources that have been helpful to you during this time? Absolutely. YouTube, Google, and Reddit were the three top things that I figured out. And then ultimately I ended up going to therapy. And I had a lot of confirmation there to figure out that I was actually dealing with someone who was narcissistic and had those tendencies and traits. But I joined some Reddit groups, and you can join those anonymously, and you can be as open and transparent and honest as possible, and you will get open, transparent, and honest answers. And what's going on, and some of those answers that I received and the things that I explained on there were painful to hear, but they were true, and they were eye-opening. And I'm thankful that I actually was able to receive that type of feedback on there. YouTube videos of people who had actually dealt with some of the similar situations, sometimes even worse, and that made me feel like that I wasn't alone in this world dealing with it. And then, good old Google anything, you can Google whatever and find it. But more so, I would say Reddit, YouTube, and then therapy probably be the best. Let's see. What do you do to take care of your own mental health and well-being now? Like I said, I try to eat as healthy as possible. Not doing a great job at that now, but I'll get it back on track. Exercise regularly. Fell off kind of a cliff there recently because I got sick, but I'm jumping right back into it, and I've maintained my gym membership. I know how I feel when I do these things. So, I know once I get back into that routine again, things will definitely start looking back up. And I stay occupied, and I put all of my focus and attention on my sons and trying to make them happy, because making them happy genuinely makes me happy. So, they're only little and young for so long, and I absolutely don't want to take that for granted. And soaking up every minute of it. Just actually went to a field trip with my oldest son. It took his second grade year for him to finally get a field trip, but we went to a field trip together, and the look on his face and me being able to be there with him, he was just so ecstatic and so proud to have his dad with him. You couldn't wipe that smile off his face, and it made my week. It made me feel so good and so proud to be his father. Just it made my day, my week, my month. And I'm still flying high on cloud nine from that field trip, and I still look at those pictures that I took. I take plenty of pictures of them, and I took some pictures of that field trip, and I still look at them and just smile. I'm so glad I got to share that moment with him. But let's see. How do you envision your future, both personally and in terms of your relationship with your children? I have a very positive outlook for our future. I feel like I got a good head on my shoulders. I got a good grasp on a lot of these things that I'm dealing with, even though I'm dealing with a lot of things that I definitely didn't ask for. And the anxiety has been tough navigating. I feel like I got a good grip on it. I'm addressing these things properly, and I feel like I'm doing a great job at being a father. And I feel like as long as I just keep my priorities in check and keep everything in line, my ducks in a row, I feel like everything will work out for the best. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it when it comes to that. So as long as I just keep my priorities in check and continue to put my kids first, I feel like everything else will line out properly. Have you found any effective coping mechanisms or strategies for managing your anxiety and PTSD? Yeah, I have. I got a smartwatch on right now. Manages my heart rate. I can tell, like when I'm stressed. Got some coping mechanisms for if I'm having a panic attack. I know I just stand there, close my eyes, take deep breaths, pursed breaths. Help. It's like when like it's it's hard to explain, but being very mindful about what I actually put in my body. Was real easy in my younger days to, pop a couple of Tylenol whenever I had a headache. But you got to be more mindful these days for whenever you're dealing with minor ailments, such as a headache or something like that, to how much over-the-counter medicine you're putting in your body, because that can have an absolute detrimental effect on your mental health and your physical health as well, and can trigger anxiety, panic attacks, heart palpitations, and all kinds of stuff. And I had to cut out a lot of that myself because I was taking, I was taking Excedrin excessively for migraines, which were actually 9 times out of 10 brought on by not drinking enough water and dehydration and the way that I was sleeping. I was taking allergy medicine, heartburn medicine, just a whole bunch of over-the-counter daily medicine that I could have easily, addressed myself in my diet, changing up my diet, the way that I sleep, drinking more water, and just simple things like, just taking a walk. Go take a walk. Take a load off, just get your mind off of things, and instead I was taking an easy route and the over the counter route, and it actually did. It led to some heart palpitations and all kinds of other nonsense. So there's that. But it says, how has your experience influenced your perspective on relationships and trust? It's been tough. It has. I've dated a lot. Um, Dating was never really that's never really been that big of an issue for me. I've always seemed to get along well with women. And I've had a pretty positive dating life outside of when I was married and stuff like that, and friendships with women as well. But um, after this divorce and having that hypersensitivity to some of these little minor red flags that might stand out, or personality traits that might trigger some negative feelings, make me feel like, oh, hold up, here we go again. I've seen this before. Yeah, I mean, it causes you to feel immediately different about this person, and that can be tough to navigate, because while this person might not be like this at all, it still worries you to make you think like, man, what if I go and invest myself in this person and they turn out to be just like this? It's just another big amount of wasted time and a whole bunch of unnecessary pain. So yeah, it does. It bothers you in that way, and that's a tough situation to navigate. Something that I'm dealing with myself, or like still to this day. So I'm currently deciding not to deal with it, and just putting my focus and attention on myself and my sons at the moment. So um let's see, what role has forgiveness played in your healing process? Good question, because there isn't a role, because I haven't forgiven her, and I'm just being real. I struggle with that every day of my life. It's hard to forgive a person that's done as much as she's done to me. Um, Especially when you've opened up on a certain level to that person, and when you've been that vulnerable with a person and showed them that side of you that you've never showed anyone before, and trusted them on another level, and then for them to do the things like that I've had to endure, that's a struggle of mine to this day. I have not forgiven her. I haven't. And while I'll reach moments in time where I feel like I'm on the positive side of things and I move past it, and I feel like that I can, you know, naturally be civil with her instead of forcibly being civil, like having to make myself be civil and not, you know what I mean? Like, there's been times where I'm like, okay, yeah, like, maybe I am getting past this. Then she'll have some kind of situation occur with me where she shows those tendencies again, um, in what feels like she's purposely trying to be a thorn in my side as a co-parent, or trying to make, it difficult, and be difficult on, mine and my son's relationship. It, that's when the negative feelings come back, and I realize, yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. Like, I still don't like you just as much as the day that you pulled this crap on me the first time. Um so yeah, that's tough, but it's real. It's real. And I'm not lying about that. I'm not going to sit here and say that you're, just, get over it, move past it, because it's not that easy. It takes effort, it takes a lot of effort. And I'm trying. I am. Mainly for my son's sake, because I don't want them to think that I hate their mother. I don't want them to think that I constantly have ill will towards their mother. But it is tough. It's really tough, because I have felt some of the worst pain in my life because of that woman and that woman alone. So that's yeah, it's difficult. So moving beyond that, have you considered advocacy or support work for others going through similar situations? Yes, I have, and that's why I'm doing this now. Not only is this genuine therapy for myself, just talking about it and addressing it, it's a positive feeling knowing that this could possibly reach someone who's dealing with these situations too. And if it does, I mean, just the thought alone of it possibly helping someone or saving someone, for that matter, and enlightening someone and opening someone's eyes to what they're dealing with. Just the thought of that alone is worth me sitting here, talking about this. And so that's why I ultimately decided to do this and follow through with this and address some of these difficult topics in my life and be this open and transparent with them, because some of this stuff, trust me, I don't necessarily really want to talk about and bring up, but it's necessary because, the ones who are dealing with this, they're feeling the realness of some of these difficult topics, and they need to know that there's others out there dealing with it too. So, and last but not least, how has your experience affected your outlook on life and the importance of resilience? I would say that these experiences, while they've toughened me up and ultimately made me feel like, if I can get through, especially '09, I would remind myself multiple times when I was dealing with these things, throughout my marriage and the divorce. If I can make it through '09, I can make it through anything. And especially for my kids, when I didn't have kids back in '09, I absolutely have to. You know what I mean? But basically, I take these experiences that I dealt with, and I constantly remind myself that the good thing that I can take away from them is that if my children, and I hope to God not, but if my children ever possibly come across these situations, I can sit down with them and have very serious discussions with them about what I dealt with when I was their age and what I did to get through it, and be a constant reassurance about how there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's never worth it giving up, because it will always get better no matter how bad it feels. So that is that, and I will not keep this going on any longer. I'm so sorry if I ramble so much. I know I have an issue with rambling. But I feel like a lot of what I say is relevant, and ultimately I hope that what I have had to say and the things that I've discussed and addressed and mentioned in this episode hits home for some, and I hope it finds the right people and helps the ones who truly need it, because I remember being that person that genuinely needed it, and I wish I had found somebody like this that I could have relied on to remind myself, that it's not just me out here dealing with it. And I did. I found quite a few on Reddit, but it's a little bit different when you see somebody more vulnerable on camera, face to face with you, telling you, that you're not alone. So, and you're not. And it never hurts to pray. Never hurts to pray. So, on that note, I hope you guys, if you are dealing with any of these things, I hope it gets better. And I hope that for the majority of all of you that possibly find this video, I hope that it isn't the case. And I hope that whatever issue you're going with is minor and it's easily sorted out. And I wish the best for you and your relationship. And I hope, I hope the best for anyone and everyone that comes across this video. So, y'all have a good one, and I will see you on the next one.